Goodbye, offseason. We are breaking up, and it's you. It's not us. We hate you. Goodbye. Welcome to the podcast daily. It's Monday. That's Sperm. I am Austin. We have made it. It is Indiana game week. Ohio State kicks off the season on Saturday at 3:30. Berm and I cannot wait to get back on the road. Cannot wait to cover a game again. Cannot wait to be around crowds. Cannot wait to have something else to talk about. That's the show, Berm. We got to bury the offseason and celebrate what's coming now.
I think there has to be some way as college football expands to this, new world where you're going to have 2 or 3 or 4 power conferences and then everyone else. Like, I think those 4 power conferences should play in the fall, and the other league, the other half of the NCAA should play starting like March through June. So that way we don't really have an off season, because as quiet, I guess in some ways, as good as this offseason was, because there was no major issues, no scandals, no huge coaching changes, no whatever, which has, doesn't feel like that's been the case for very often lately. I still think it was too long. And I already start to get the pangs of anxiety knowing that, yes, we are now in game week, but we know how fast the season goes, and it will be the off season again in no time. And, I guess I'm just starting to regret the fact that the offseason exists, period. And I think we should start a new trend on social media, and it's going to be hashtag ban the offseason. And let's ban the offseason from here on out.
One thing about college football that's changed, at least since I started covering it, I don't know how much you feel this way. You already had recruiting camps that you covered, but some of that with the calendar has changed over the course of your own career. Like, college football, you really used to stop. Like, spring ball was going to be it. They're like, when I covered my first beat, it was at Wyoming. And it was like the 6 weeks of spring ball, the coverage was cool, but they could take it or leave it. Basketball was going on. You'd cover other sports. Like, nobody was really tuned into it. And you didn't have, again, that's different than Ohio State, obviously, but I feel like that was also the case with Tennessee and SEC and moving here. Like, it really didn't have 12 months of content like we do now. And that's not just realignment. That's the other nonsense that comes along, the recruiting calendar, transfer portal, NIL, all these things have really mounted that you can talk about college football. And we do now 365 days a year. I think that's a sign of health for the sport. There's a lot of been conversation that all these moves are killing college football and the interest is going to die. I don't believe that. I actually think that it is stronger and healthier than ever, even if there are a lot of things that we may not like about it. Even the stuff with expansion seems like it's strengthening the sport overall and bringing more money and more eyeballs to it. But it's just wild, because it used to mean that once you got to media days in July and the start of training camp, it's like, oh, this is all new and fun. But we talked about the position battles starting in January, and they're pretty much all done now, except for one big one.
Well, you have to do the spring position battles, and then you can do the regular season position battles. And I would argue that college football is not healthier than it's ever been. It's certainly more profitable than it's ever been. And so for the people making their money, it's certainly stronger for them. But I think in general, the product does feel a little bit different for most people. But that, I also think that the 365 days a year coverage, that sort of stuff, is a byproduct of the people deciding to make more money, like the Big Ten Network and the Longhorn Network and SEC Network. So, you have to find stuff to fill in those days now, because those networks exist and you can't just go on the air for 6 months a year. So either way, I'm grateful we get a chance to do it. I do think that it feels like the off season, as long as this one felt, because of how the way last season ended, I think, it does feel shorter and shorter, because there is not any time to really take off. I mean, Bill's on his last, vacation of the summer this weekend, and that's why he's not on this episode of the show. We've each tried to take a little bit of time off, but there's really not that much opportunity to even get a rest. And I think that's why the Ohio State coaches, they do it right. Like, the minute that the recruiting period ends in June, they take 3 weeks off and they are just gone. And that. It used to be that you could do that in February. It used to be that you could do that in February, and then in May, and then in July. But now you get one time, and that's it. So I'm grateful we get to do it, and I love that football is back. And the things I'm, really appreciating the most are, we're going to do things a little different this year on the podcast and over at OhioState.Rivals.com. Bill is not going to travel with us this year because he's going to be doing some Saturday stuff with Doug and on the podcast. And, I'm looking forward to just getting back to the routines that we have on the road, the road beers, the road breaks. I think people enjoyed that a year ago, and I'm glad that we have the opportunity to maybe continue that as long as Card Collector 2 wants to continue to be generous with us. But we're always willing to open cards, Ryan. I'm just glad we get road beers, we get back on the road. I don't love this year's schedule for that purpose because I think we're on the road more than normal, but it's going to get weirder next year. So I guess we may as well just enjoy the traditional Big Ten footprint, even though we're going to spend 16 days in Indiana over the next 2 months.
Yeah, we're going to have to start paying taxes in the state of Indiana, unfortunately, this year. We've already been there once, a little over a month ago. So buckle up for all of that. I wanted to. So we kicked this off on a downer, right? Like it's not a downer. Arguing over if it's healthy or profitable. You said that the offseason is going to be here again before we know it, and we're going to have to go back into another cuffing relationship in January.
My bad. I was listening to a lot of My Chemical Romance this morning. Sorry about that. Just got
of course you were
super gothy.
I mean, there was new Turnpike Troubadours on Friday, so you should have fired that up first. But
new Turnpike Troubadours and new Zach Bryan. I mean, that's as good as it gets.
That's an Americana Friday. So an Americana weekend
starts.
So spoiler alert, those will be played on Friday on the road over to Bloomington for us. But I was hoping to just celebrate with the things that you're looking forward to, because we took a couple vacations, the two of us, but we don't want time off from now, September through the middle of January. This is what we do all the other work for, to enjoy the games and the opportunity to watch them and go on the road, even if nobody likes to hear anybody complain about the travel difficulties or the fact that we have to go to Indiana. Like, we still get to, and you mentioned that, that's a positive. But once these games start, Berm, what are you most looking forward to this season?
I've been trying to think about this, and I think the biggest thing I'm looking forward to, Ohio State specifically, is just a return to normal, and the opportunity to see, provided that everyone is what we think they're going to be based on what we've seen and heard over the last 8 months. I'm looking forward to seeing an aggressive Ryan Day again. I'm looking forward to seeing a healthy Travion Henderson again. I'm looking forward to watching Marvin Harrison, the best player in college football, do things that no one else can do. That's one of those things where we look at it and we watch Marvin all year round because we see him so much in the Woody, but like, for the people out there who don't get a chance to see what he does, it's truly special to watch someone like that. And I think that just the opportunity to get to watch these guys do the things they do and get back to normal is something I'm really just grateful and looking forward toward, because this offseason, more than any, I think in the time I've covered Ohio State, just felt like a lot of the fan base has a lot of anxiety. And I think that they could really use an Ohio State return to normalcy starting this Saturday. Sorry. Wow, it's crazy. This Saturday at Indiana. I think people need to see that. They need to, believe it, and they need to see it to believe it. So you got to get Ryan Day being out there, being aggressive, throwing haymakers on the offensive play calling, a healthy Travion Henderson, so people can be reminded of how good he was as a freshman, and just, a return to the silver bullets. Like let's just get back to normal Ohio State football.
That's been missing, right? Do you feel like 19 was the last time it felt truly normal?
Yeah. I mean, that was the last time the world felt truly normal, I think, in a lot of ways. But football, which is supposed to be the escape from that for people, has felt equally, out of alignment. So that 2019 team, I've watched Ohio State my whole life. I would say that 2019 team is like the third best team I've ever seen Ohio State have. So that was the year when certainly it felt normal.
So when you look at this travel schedule and you're kind of dreading it a little bit, and this one in particular, we're going to have to figure it out. But I've actually never been to Camp Randall. The last time Ohio State played there, I was working for ESPN, and we had multiple people scattered across the league. And so I didn't travel to every single road game. I missed that thriller, the overtime. So I've not been there, and I'm really excited to do so. I know that the beer is great. I've heard plenty about the cheese curds and the various ways to consume them. So those are two big pros, two things that I have to experience. And then I've never felt, that press box swaying, which I guess you haven't either. So I don't know what that's going to be like, but haven't got to do that. So I'm actually really looking forward to that. There hasn't been a ton of those opportunities recently. I've been, as you mentioned, blessed to cover this league now for more than a decade. So a lot of those have been scratched off. The following week, for example, I don't want to go back to Rutgers, and I don't enjoy the 9-hour car ride over there. I know you do. I know how much you love Rutgers. And yes, the Strombo is good. And we have located some quality beers, but that's a horrible game day experience.
Yeah, but at least it's easy to park, and you can get to the stadium without traffic. And they do a nice job with the how they treat the media there, et cetera. I don't mind Rutgers. They try at least. They at least try. I mean, yeah, I think the stadium's kind of cool, honestly, from field level. It's one of my favorite ones in the league because it just sort of has a very unique vibe to it, and it's always full of Ohio State fans. And so you kind of get it's like a home away from home game. Wisconsin, I've been to once, and I didn't get a chance to be up in the press box, as you alluded to, but that was 2016 when Ohio State was there last, and that was a fun game. This one, I assume, will be a much more cantankerous version for Ohio State, and at night is going to be wild. My brother Bobby went to Wisconsin in 2003 and said it was the one time he, as an Ohio State fan, actually feared for his physical safety because he thought Wisconsin fans were so awful. So that's always something to look forward to if you're a Buckeye fan on the road.
Good.
Bring personal protective gear. But yeah, I don't know. I look at the schedule. I'm super excited to be at Notre Dame. I think, when you're talking about like those cathedrals of college football, like that is one where you have it penciled. And Ohio State and Notre Dame have played 6 times in their history, or this will be the 6th time. And to see those two programs, those two uniforms on the field together at the same time is going to be one of those. We don't get like chills very often anymore, like on the road or seeing new things. It's still always awesome to walk into the big house and see Ohio State and Michigan on that field or whatever. But this one, at the trip to Notre Dame, will feel a little bit special.
It's wild. Like every time that number is brought up for the number of times that Ohio State and Notre Dame have played the series, like I can't believe it. It feels like it has to be 10 times that amount. With two programs,
because 4 of those times they played have been in the last 15 years, and so it feels like it's more frequent. But or 3 of those times.
Yeah, that's the other part that I was going to say. Is like I've covered 3 of them. How could it be that 2 of the most tradition-rich, recognizable powerhouse brands, both in the Midwest, could only have played that amount of time that I've covered? Will have covered half of them myself. That part is bonkers to me.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And you think about it, and the fact that they went from 1936 to 2000 or to 1995 and 1996, but they went 60 years without playing, and now they played in 95 and 96, played in the 2005 Fiesta Bowl, 2006 Fiesta Bowl, sorry, and then obviously the 2015 Fiesta Bowl, and now last year and this year, like it seems like all of a sudden it's a regular old matchup again. Which either way, we haven't got to cover it at Notre Dame. And so that's what I'm really looking forward to. I remember watching that game, Ohio State at Notre Dame in the 90s, and just thinking, man, that's something I wish I could be at. And the fact that we'll get to be there, but be on the field, like, is something that, I don't ever take this job for granted, but that's one of those moments. Sometimes you can just go, oh God, we got to travel to Purdue. But then you're like, oh, we get to go to Notre Dame. Like that's a really cool experience.
I don't think I'm quite as depressed about the Purdue trip as Rutgers, like, because we've had to make that one so many times.
Purdue is a vortex of misery. Like there is something.
Yeah, I know. I don't like West Lafayette.
Around West Lafayette, that the minute it's like Hawkins, Indiana, from Stranger Things. Like you walk in there and you're like, I don't know what the hell is happening, but something is off here. Something is wrong. I think
when they originally wrote the script, they did call it West Lafayette. And they're like, that doesn't sound like a real place. Like we can't use it. Just change it to something easier to say, like Hawkins. They'll know that it's West Lafayette.
Pistol Pete or Purdue Pete or whatever the hell his name is as the Mind Flayer is actually not that much of a reach to me. I mean, when you look into those soulless eyes on that big plastic head, like I can understand why people get a little bit freaked out. That guy is weird, carrying around that hammer like he's Thor.
But if we get a noon banger there, then we get to go home. We can't do that in Rutgers.
Yeah, but it's an 11 a.m. banger. That makes it even weirder. See, everything's weird about Purdue. I just don't like it. I'm glad we get to go to have Minnesota at home in November instead of going to Minnesota in November. So if we're talking about things we're looking forward to, that's something I'm looking forward to, not traveling to Minnesota in November, because the one time that happened was 2014, and it was the most miserable game day experience I've ever had covering Ohio State, with the 2015 Michigan State game very close behind it, or every other Michigan State game, because somehow the weather just always is awful for that one, except for last year. It was beautiful. But
that doesn't bode well for this year.
Yeah, I mean, because it was in October last year, and it's, the minute you cross that line, that Halloween date in that part of Michigan, it all of a sudden turns into full-fledged winter. Stupid.
All right, let's set aside our own travel. What else are you looking forward to out of college football in this wonderful season that is back on Saturday?
I am looking forward to what Doug and Bill talked at length about on one of the most recent episodes of Kings of Columbus, and that is the Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State triumvirate in the Big Ten, and seeing how they acquit themselves. I think that it is. I think most people agree that the Big Ten East is the best division in college football, and I really am excited to see those three schools prove it and go out and just dominate everyone and have a handful of classic games between each of them. And that's certainly something I'm looking forward to, because I am so sick and tired of the SEC winning the national championship every year. And I think that for the Big Ten, whoever gets into the playoff from the Big Ten needs those tests to happen in the regular season to get you prepared for what it's going to be like to play those other teams.
See, you say that most people know that, and I hope that that's true, that the Big Ten East is the best division. I hope that they recognize that it is, with those three teams at the top. But there seems to still be a much larger percentage of people who don't want to admit it. And I think you can tell when you see, like, well, Alabama's going to be fine just because Nick Saban's there, and maybe LSU's going to win the national championship. They can't break the habit. They still want to pick the SEC West. And that is like really frustrating to me. Like, it shouldn't matter, but it does matter.
They keep winning it, so it's hard to go against them when there's been two national champions from above the Mason-Dixon line in the last 20 years, and it was Ohio State both times. Like, it's hard for people to get behind the idea that the Big Ten East is better than the SEC West. And I think if you stacked up the Big Ten East versus the SEC West and you played Ohio State, Bama, Michigan, LSU, I mean, I think you're probably going to split. I think if you put, anybody in that league, those three Big Ten teams can play with anybody in the SEC. And I think everyone's aware of that. But I think until the Big Ten actually wins a national championship again, or people are just going to be like, yeah, but they can't win the big one. And I guess that's fair, but it is annoying.
Yeah. I don't know. At least it's not on the level of Texas being back when they're not. I mean,
well, Texas is going to be the playoff this year, and that's something I'm looking forward to. Winning a lot of money when Quinn Ewers wins the Heisman. So I'm looking forward to that. I did put some units on that, as you know, and I think that I'm really looking forward to just the rivalry games that are going to go away, or the ones that are going to be altered by the changing of college football. Seeing how some of these games play out in this last year of relative normalcy. The Oregon State game is going to be a classic. Obviously, I always love the Red River Shootout. They're going to continue to play against each other, but I just want to see college football have like a great final year of this.
Bedlam's ending.
Yeah, exactly. Which is dumb. Like, how can you not figure out how to just keep playing each other? You're still 2 hours apart. Just figure it out.
It's not even 2 hours, which makes it even crazier. And they've been
with game day traffic, it might be.
Oh yeah, it's true.
And if you're riding a scooter to get to the stadium,
what What else do you think will be loaded onto our phones to listen to on Friday other than new Troubadours and new Zach Bryan?
Well, this is not that long of a trip. So, unfortunately, this Zach Bryan album is not 40 songs like, American Heartbreak. So, we will actually have to find something else to listen to. But I've already begun listening to both of those in earnest to try to learn the songs. I'm a big Zach Bryan fan, as you know, but like I'm not vibing yet with this album. Like I haven't found like the one song that I'm like, that's it. So I'm still looking for that. So I'm sure we'll listen to that quite a few times. When we get to Indianapolis this time, let's talk about that. Like, what are you are we daredeviling again? Or are we going somewhere else? I mean, I know you've already got the plans in place. I know for you, like that's one of your favorite parts of the regular season is planning out the brewery trip. So what's on the agenda for this first week? So that people, if you're going to be in Indianapolis and you want to buy us a beer, where are they doing it this Friday?
Well, you know that I don't like to tell you in advance.
That's true.
Usually you don't find out what brewery we're going to, what pizza we're going to have until I say, hey, the Uber's coming and this is where we're going. Because I'm so scared of you, Berm. Like, what if you don't approve?
Well,
what if you don't want this kind of beer?
As long as we don't go to a place full of sours, I'm good with it. I just don't like sours.
Well, there's only one time I remember you being very disappointed, but you completely forgot about it 2 hours later because we went to the Imperial Stout Emporium in Chicago before the Northwestern game, and you cranked out 13% Imperial Stouts. You didn't like them. I don't think you could tell the difference between
they were all really bad. Yeah, but by the second one, it didn't matter. None of them tasted good. None of them tasted good at all. But it was just a weird place. Yeah. It was like in a little strip mall, like next to a nail parlor, next to a massage parlor. Like, what is this place? It wasn't exactly what we're used to, but I do think for America who's traveling to Indianapolis or in there, like we need to let them know where we're going to be at some point, because that's the whole point of what we're doing with the podcast is trying to form a community that drinks together and thinks together.
That's true. Well, there'll be more details coming on that, not just for this week, but we are looking to add one more part to our coverage moving forward, which is Doug Maurice used the subtext, and where we can share some of those details for people who want to sign up and be part of the podcast stuff here. There's already a good community at ohiostate.rivals.com, but this will be the next step for that, where the four of us can all directly text to your phone if you're so inclined and you want to hear more from us. And I think we had to do some training for that last week, and they showed a way that we can organize some meetups and provide details about where we are. So that's one more thing that we're adding into the coverage. And you may think, well, this podcast has been pretty weird today. Like, they're not even talking about the football game that is Saturday against Indiana. Well,
there's a lot of that coming.
I'm sorry for that if you didn't enjoy just hearing us shoot the breeze and relax a little bit. But B, we have the Roosters live show, and that will be a deep football conversation. And then later on today, Monday night, we will be doing our first event at Land Grant Brewing Company in the beer garden. That's another thing that I'm super excited about because I have spent more time than most. I think the owners probably have me beat out there for number of beers consumed at Land Grant, but I've always wanted to do something with them, organize on the stage there. Berm, myself, Bill, and Doug, and Zach Boren will be there starting around 6:30 later on tonight for another event. So, like, it's another thing that as we continue to grow, I'm just excited about this year too with the podcast and this company and the my best friends in this industry who I get to do this with. And I think that we just have some cool ideas that we're hoping to execute to the best of our ability this year. And so there will be a lot more football coverage about Ohio State at Indiana coming on the podcast later today. But I thought maybe we would just take a step back and enjoy the big picture for a little bit to kick off the week.
Yeah, that is fair. We have spent a lot of time in the last month diving into the minutia of camp. And, the reality of it all is that the season is now here. Can't wait to get back into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Tuesday, and we'll get our final pre-season update from Ryan Day. Maybe he'll name a quarterback. Maybe he won't. I would doubt it, but you never know what happens in the last week. It's just a fun time to be covering college football, and really looking forward to, as you said, tonight at Land Grant is going to be a blast. So people, if you're looking for something to do on your Monday night in Columbus, come out and join us. And like Austin said, there's a lot of other ways we're looking to try and build a community here with people that we can actually, thrive together and figure out a way to make sure people get what they want out of what we bring to the table. So looking forward to it.
Yeah. And then, for the off season, we've got 2 words for you. Suck it. You're gone. You're out of here. Ohio State, Indiana on Saturday. A lot more coverage coming your way on the podcast. Thanks for spending your Monday morning with us. Hope you spend the rest of your Monday on the podcast as well, with a lot more content coming your way ahead of the opener. We really appreciate you. And for Berm, I'm Austin. We'll talk to you later.